Hello again. Okay, so there was this big ice storm back in January, and my son and I were sort of lowercase t trapped in the house for a couple of days, and I started making these marker drawings with these amorphous blobs and these grids, kind of while we were hanging out watching movies or playing with Legos, and it was just something that was kind of akin to like coloring in a coloring book or something. And then the storm passed, and I just found myself making them over and over again. I have dozens and dozens of these. And this is the first time I'm attempting to see what that looks like, feels like, is in paint on a canvas. This is also, a new foray into things that are more abstract. I have historically painted and drawn rather figuratively. Um, Maybe because I felt like, well, there's just like something in reality to anchor it to, right? To check your drawing against, to be aiming for, which is always helpful, right? To have direction. But there's something about these which feel the marker drawings, I guess, particularly when I'm making them, that feel very meditative, very kind of like they give me the same feeling as like doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's like a little bit soothing, a little bit mindless, a little bit keeping my hands busy. And I think I used to think, or I don't know, like shy away from things that sort of were this kind of like soothing busy work, but I now, when I come back around to it, I think kind of just like, why not? Like, why did I make that rule for myself? I don't know. I don't remember. What we're watching right here is the most successful moment of the entire painting. It really just goes downhill from here, but that's okay. um, I want to do another study where I try to recreate what just happened. And I think you'll be able to see why it looks so cool in the photo in the end. But it's really just, there's like a really lovely kind of liquid layering, and the colors are, it's just very like, it feels more alive than the rest of the painting. And I think part of it is that I made the first couple strokes with like, what I'm going to call dirty water. I mean, technically it's terpenoid, but essentially just like a jar full of dirty, synthetic turpentine and paint, and somehow that mixed with the colors I was using was the thing that made the sweet spot. So will be hard to recreate, but I'm gonna try. And I'm messing with a palette here that I've been using a lot lately. There's this painting I just absolutely love. I've loved it since I was in college, and it's by a French painter named Watteau, and the title of the painting is Pierrot. It's a life-size portrait of a sort of clown archetype from French theater from, I think, like the 1800s, maybe. Don't fact check that, please. And This portrait, I actually have a printed image on my wall. You up above the canvas, you can just see like the frills of the collar. Anyway, it's the expression on his face is just something that I think holds this kind of melancholy and this kind of um, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's the right word for it. But it's also like it feels sort of like resigned, but also mysterious. I've just always gravitated towards it, and I love the whole painting though is gorgeous. And anyway, all that to say, The Fool is a painting I return to over and over again, and I wanted to play around with the palette of that painting, and so I have been limiting myself lately to those colors, um, which kind of lend themselves well to this kind of basket weaving thing, which I realized I was doing kind of as I started making the painting, because translating something from marker to paint doesn't really work, you know, in the same way. And as I was thinking of my kind of angle of approach, I was reminded of this project I did for my friend. My friend Keith is involved in this like car and art show, and I was tasked with modifying and making a piece from this very cool plaster car. And I chose to make a like very thin strips of Douglas fir veneer and weave them together in like around the car to make a car shaped basket. And as I was sitting down to make this painting, I was like, what are the texture? What's the texture? What's the stroke width? What's the color? What do these things want to be? And I thought of that car, and it kind of all fit with the palette, beautifully. So I went with that. This just looks like a goldfish cracker with a giant tail. Anyhow, sometimes when I come up against questions in my mind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, or why none of these paintings, make sense together, or there's this pressure to make work that feels cohesive and feels like a body of work. But I tend to paint all sorts of things, and I think a way of thinking about a framing that helps me is to think about it as like this very, like my art practice is like a very long term world building activity. I paint animals. I paint a lot of horses. I paint lately I've been painting sharks a lot. That'll be in the next video. And I paint abstractly. I do portraits. I feel like there's a lot of things I like to explore. And lately I've been thinking about it as someone who's just, I'm like a collector of things. And, at work, my day job, I'm an industrial designer, and I sometimes flip through like the Hayfella catalog, which is just all the hardware in the world, for construction and cabinetry and things like that. And just order random little things that, serve no function in terms of my immediate work product, but I love the shape of this little shelf pin, that we'll never use, or the bracket for this closet rod that I think is just really elegant. And I started collecting all these little things at my job, and I think that's sort of the bulk of maybe what's in my studio and how it feels to make little bits of work like this all the time. Is that I'm just kind of creating a collection of things that interest me, and it maybe won't make sense for a very long time altogether as a whole, but anyway, that's just kind of helped me make sense of my choices. Gosh, this is like always the most satisfying part, This is the part that feels the most like a coloring book. And it's kind of serves to like tidy up the painting. The blue, it's just like gorgeous contrast. Yeah. This also takes up like half the painting time doing this, but it's really satisfying. I was getting impatient there at the end because I feel like I'd learned what I wanted to learn, and so I just wanted to kind of finish it. I'm painting this on, it's actually a piece of 1/8" plywood with 2 layers of gesso. I really like painting on a firm surface that's a plywood or something for some reason. I like what I like, It's also fun to make the surfaces myself. It's also like a great way to delay painting. 'Cause you're like, well, I have to make all these painting surfaces. I have to spend hours gessoing them. It's not my fault. I don't make the rules. Anyway, happy to be back. Thank you for listening. I showed this to someone at work, and he said it looked like the baskets were puking everywhere, which I thought was kind of funny. But if you have any other words to share, I would gladly receive them. All right. Bye.